Welcome to Acutherm's webinar, LEED Possibilities with Therma-Fuser VAV Systems. We'll be ready to start in about 10 minutes. I would like to thank everyone joining us for today's webinar, LEED Possibilities with Therma-Fuser VAV Systems. This is an ongoing webinar in a series of webinars we've been presenting, so hopefully you've had a chance to attend one of the previous ones. As a quick recap, we are talking about Therma-Fuser VAV diffusers, which have a VAV damper and a thermostat built into each diffuser. By having a thermostat in each diffuser, we can create very small zones of control and provide individual comfort. By having the VAV damper built into the diffuser, it creates a very good room air mixing system as the discharge velocities are maintained throughout the VAV operation. So from minimum flow to maximum flow, getting good air distribution. Primarily, the diffusers are thermally powered, which means no electronics, no pneumatics. They're standalone. Install them like you would any other diffuser, and they operate from the temperature of the air. That said, we also have electric diffusers available, and those have some special applications, and we'll touch on those later. Each diffuser provides individual set points for individual room air temperature control. They're very low maintenance, really just occasional cleaning is all they need, come with a 10-year warranty. And you can design very low energy systems around the Therma-Fuser diffusers, and that's a good lead into today's topic, which is LEED possibilities. So LEED version 4, our current version of LEED, was released back in November of 2013. Seems a long time ago, but when you look at the LEED version 3 or LEED 2009, was active up until late 2016. LEED version 4 really hasn't been into full swing there for only the last year or so. So under the new LEED version 4, really looking to, as you see from their statement there, transformation of the construction industry. And they're focused more on, what shall I call them, greater goals here, climate change, not just energy conservation, but climate change, human health, restoring water, again, not just saving water, but restoring water, biodiversity, material resources, and a greener economy. And all that comes around to driving toward a quality of life. The LEED systems are not, or what do I want to say? They're building based. They don't certify products. They only certify buildings. But to get to a certified building, you have to design it with different products, so that it's those products that contribute to the different points under the rating systems. LEED version 4 has broken the system down into 21 different market sectors, so quite a range of different systems you can work at for different specifics. For today's presentation, we'll be focused in on new construction and major renovation, but I will reference some of the other systems where applicable. LEED version 4, broken down here, the categories, and it'll be those 3 categories with the arrows that we focus in on to see where the Therma-Fuser diffuser can help. Energy and atmosphere, the largest single point category in the system. That's been true since, I believe, since the beginning, but still a very important category here. But we'll also be looking at the indoor environmental quality. You can see that's second largest category there, tied with location and transportation. And then we'll touch on some innovation toward the end. So breaking that down a little bit further, integrated process, this is a new category for LEED version 4, and it's really encouraging what LEED has been about since the beginning, which is early design consensus, early design collaboration, getting everybody involved ahead of actually putting up the building to get a good design in place. Location and transportation, as it states, focusing on where the building is and how you get to the building. Sustainable sites, really looking at where that building's been placed and how it affects the area around it. Water efficiency, again, looking at how the building uses the water. These 3 categories, no real area where a Therma-Fuser diffuser can help, but Next is energy and atmosphere. As I mentioned, largest point category in the system, and the largest points within that category are the optimized energy performance. So a lot of points possible from optimizing your energy performance. You notice I've also, with that blue arrow there, shown a minimum energy performance. That has an R by it under the point section. So the system's set up where there are prerequisites in all of these different categories. And I should mention that all the prerequisites must be met if you're going to have a LEED building. You can have a lot of points, but if you miss a prerequisite, you're still not going to get that LEED certification. So make sure you meet all those prerequisites as we work through this. Materials and resources. This category was expanded for LEED version 4, and I'll discuss that a little bit more later as well. Indoor environmental quality, maybe the section where you think of using diffusers most as it comes into the comfort area. But there's a prerequisite there, minimum indoor air quality performance. We'll take a look at that. There's thermal comfort and acoustic performance, and we'll cover both of those shortly. And lastly, there's a category on innovation, and there are some areas there where the Therma-Fuser Diffuser can help as well. So how can a Therma-Fuser Diffuser system help you with your LEED building? Well, we're going to look at these 5 areas. One, we're going to look at the low energy systems and how you can create a low energy system around the Therma-Fuser diffusers. 2, we're going to look at the excellent temperature control and thermal comfort provided by the Therma-Fuser diffuser. Number 3, we'll get into the room air quality. Number 4, we'll look at the quiet operation that you can actually build around a Therma-Fuser diffuser. And number 5 there, conclude with those innovative benefits. First, the low energy systems. So as I mentioned earlier, energy atmosphere, you've got 2 sections here, or 2 points if you like. The first one is the minimum prerequisite, and the second one is where you can earn up to 18 possible points here. What both of them are looking for is to meet that prerequisite, you want a better ASHRAE baseline by, you can see 5% for new construction or 3% for major renovation. That's just the prerequisite. As you continue to better that baseline is where you're in the points. So you can see on the lower one there, as you get up to those 1 to 18 points, you've got to get from anywhere from 6 to 50% better than the ASHRAE baseline. So a lot of points to be earned there, but it is a challenge to get all those energy credits. So you've got to do a lot of designing into your system, and the HVAC system is a part of that, with the Therma-Fuser diffusers as a part of the HVAC system. So how do the diffusers help here? Well, one, you can design an all low pressure system around the diffusers. Because your thermostat and your VAV dampers are located in the diffuser, you can eliminate a lot of the pressure drops in your system and size your ducts accordingly so that you get an all low pressure system. This allows you to start with a lower horsepower fan motor right off the bat. So a good energy savings right there. Because it's a VAV system, you get further fan energy savings as the system turns down, and you can slow down that fan using a variable frequency drive to capture that energy. Also, you can create very small zones of control around the Therma-Fuser diffusers, again, because they have a thermostat and VAV damper built into each one. That means you're not going to overcool over heat spaces as much because you have those small zones of control. The diffusers themselves can turn down a lot further than other VAV devices on the market. So where minimum ventilation allows you to, you can get to lower turn downs, and that saves energy. They also require no additional energy to operate. I mentioned there, primarily we're talking about thermally powered VAV diffusers here. And that thermally powered diffuser gathers its energy from the supply air and the room air. So you're not supplying any additional energy, no electricity, no pneumatics to the diffusers. And lastly, you can design a relatively simple control system around the diffusers. And that protects you against what I had one engineer tell me, I borrow his words here, efficiency decay. And what he's referring to is those inevitable maladjustments that occur over time. As the building's up and running, different things get set differently, sensors drift a little bit, and all of those accumulate over time to pull the system away from optimal. And if you can minimize the controls and simplify the controls, you can really minimize the effect that can have on your system. So putting all those into effect, a couple example buildings here. This is the stopwaste.org building. When it was first constructed, it was a LEED Platinum building, one of the first in the world at the time, under, I believe the scorecard will show us here in a minute, I've forgotten offhand. But more recently, it became the first in the world to be LEED version 4 Platinum building under the existing buildings rating system. So they went back and recertified the building and got the first Platinum under LEED version 4. Here's their original scorecard. The red arrow there showing that it was able to achieve all 10 of the energy credits available at the time, again with a Therma-Fuser diffuser helping contribute to that. The other green circles on the page there, you can see the other areas where the Therma-Fuser diffusers help to contribute to this building's LEED Platinum rating. A second building here, I like this example because this building for Adobe went up prior to LEED gaining any momentum. And then once LEED was around, they went and did a certification under the existing buildings and achieved a Platinum rating. Over 800 Therma-Fuser diffusers throughout this office tower. Again, there, the red arrow, you can see they achieved some very good energy performance credits, 6 out of the 10 at the time, as well as some other credits there where the Therma-Fuser diffusers helped. I'd like to remind everyone, you can ask questions at any time during the presentation. Just go to the GoToWebinar control panel, find the questions window, and type your question there. So moving along, point number 2 here, providing individual temperature control and excellent thermal comfort. This comes in under the indoor environmental quality category, that point there for thermal comfort. What you need to do to achieve it is meet both the thermal comfort design criteria and the thermal comfort control criteria. Previous versions of LEED, these were broken down into 2 credits. They've been combined into 1 credit now, but you have to do both parts to achieve that 1 credit. Thermal comfort design, you want to meet ASHRAE standard 55, the comfort standard. And thermal comfort for control, you want to provide controls for at least 50% of your occupant spaces. So both of these are achievable with the Therma-Fuser diffuser system. Again, because the diffuser has that thermostat and that VAV damper built into each diffuser, you're getting a very good comfort in each space. And that's due to having those individual temperature set points, but also due to having the VAV damper built into the diffuser, providing a near constant discharge velocity in the space, which results in good room air movement in the space. And with a forced air sealing system, getting good room air movement, which achieves a well-mixed room, is what brings you to even temperatures and good comfort. For the thermal comfort control credit, I refer here back to the LEED reference guide for design and construction, and I just pulled this little quote out here. Examples of ineligible thermal comfort controls include a ceiling diffuser without an accessible control. Seems quite directed at a Therma-Fuser diffuser. I know previously we were achieving this credit using the set points in the diffuser, but this is pretty clear here that you're going to have to now use one of our wall adjusters. These are available for the thermally powered diffusers as well as the electric diffusers, so not that big a deal. Just you need to remember that if you're going after this credit, that you have to use a wall control to provide that easy access to the occupants. An example here of those going into effect, another Platinum building done with Therma-Fuser diffusers in the office spaces. Again, the red arrow there on the thermal comfort showing it was able to achieve those credits, controllability of systems and thermal comfort. In this case, this was an older system where they were the 2 separate credits. As a reminder, they are now, you have to achieve both of those to get the 1 credit. Moving along, point number 3, room air quality. So in the indoor environmental quality category, this is a prerequisite to meet the minimum indoor air quality performance. What they're looking for to achieve that is meeting ASHRAE 62.1, which is the ventilation standard, and complying with sections 4 to 7, which is the, again, it's the ventilation for acceptable indoor air quality. how the Therma-Fuser helps is if you can get your outside air into the building, the diffuser with that VAV damper located in it, as I mentioned earlier, better maintaining air movement within the space is going to mean you're going to get good room air change effectiveness, meaning as long as you can get the outside air to the diffuser, that diffuser is going to move that air within the space and make sure you get that outside air down into the breathing zone. So it's going to provide you a good room air movement. And again, the key here is not just at design flow, but at turn down, where a VAV system spends the majority of its time. Another example here to show that this isn't just all theory. This was a dormitory, achieved a LEED Gold Therma-Fuser diffusers throughout this building. There's the red arrow showing you that minimum IAQ performance credit achieved by this building. And I use this example because this was an older system, or older version of the LEED system, and there was a second credit there called ventilation effectiveness. And to achieve that credit, you actually had to get into the building and do some tests to prove that ventilation effectiveness. That was since removed from the systems. I think people found it a little onerous to do on-site testing, but it's a great credit to the Therma-Fuser system here that when that was still in effect, they were able to get not only that minimum IAQ performance credit, but also that ventilation effectiveness one, showing that that room air mixing is actually occurring. Moving on to point 4, quiet operation. This is new in version 4. It's an acoustic performance credit, comes in the indoor environmental quality category. And what it's looking for is basically quiet spaces. I've got a lot of the official jargon on there, but really breaking it down in the office buildings, looking for anywhere from 30 to 40 NC in the typical spaces, maybe as low as 25 NC in some of those quieter areas. The real beauty here is that the Therma-Fuser diffusers, because they have that VAV damper built in, they can be oversized. They can be oversized because they will turn down to meet the load, so you're not sacrificing comfort in this case. The diffuser is going to meet the load in the space and not overcool, overheat the space. But the advantage to all oversizing is that you can get the same air volumes at lower static pressures. Now, lower pressure means lower velocity means lower noise. So if you're trying to design a low noise system, you want to design a low pressure system. And this can be done by oversizing the diffusers. The nice thing also, Acutherm provides you with noise ratings for both full flow and turn down. There's a typical performance guide for one of the Therma-Fuser diffusers. You can see kind of in the middle of the chart there is the maximum design flow noise ratings, also with the throws. And then over toward the right is the turn down, 25% flow. We're not really getting into designing systems here, but with a properly designed system, the Therma-Fuser diffusers actually become quieter as they close down toward their minimums. And as I mentioned, this is all useful in designing a low noise system. You can oversize the diffuser and meet your design air volumes, but do it at a lower pressure and thus at a lower noise. Lastly here, we'll take a quick look at some innovative benefits. So this is the innovation section, and there are possible 5 credits here you can get from innovation. The Therma-Fuser diffuser has several areas where it can contribute to some unique options here. Sustainability. So when you think about sustainability of a building, it's that working life of the building. It's making sure you've designed something that will last a long time. And for a typical building, that means being able to work with future tenants and changes to the building, changes to the use of the building as it goes forward. And this really is a benefit to a Therma-Fuser diffuser system in that, again, I keep harping on this, but it's where the whole thing hinges. By having each diffuser as a VAV zone of control, because it's got that VAV damper and thermostat built in, you can move walls around and you're never splitting zones. You're not getting the thermostat on the wrong side of a wall because it's built into the diffuser. So it's a really sustainable approach to a building in that you can move walls around without splitting up your zones or changing around. And it allows that sustainability, that adaptability to future changes. Another sustainability feature is really no required maintenance. We've had Therma-Fuser diffusers now installed in buildings operating as long as 30 years now without repairs or replacements. The diffusers themselves come with a 10-year warranty. We only recommend the occasional cleaning of visible surfaces to keep them looking nice. Other than that, there's no lubrication schedules or anything like that. So again, if you're thinking sustainability, a building that will last into the future, this is a great product to get involved as it will last along with the building. And lastly, if we think about thermally powered diffusers, not only, I mentioned that earlier under the energy section, no additional energy required, but it also means no additional resources required. You're not running wires and pneumatic tubing to the diffusers. So you are saving on resources when you go with a thermally powered device. And all of that adds up to some pretty good options there that drive you towards some innovation. Lastly here, I'd like to touch back on materials and resources. So this section got extensively reworked in version 4 of the LEED standard or LEED system. And previously, any MEP equipment had been excluded, but now some equipment is allowed into the building, or into the building, definitely allowed into the building, allowed to be used in your LEED rating system. You notice it's basically passive equipment. I'm not sure how a Therma-Fuser diffuser works in that system, but I will point out 2 things about the new materials and resources. One, once you decide to use some of your MEP equipment, you've got to use it all. So you can't pick and choose just a couple of key components out. But 2, it does require third-party qualification on your materials and resources to certify the devices or the equipment. And so it's quite an involved section now, especially for the manufacturers to have all that third-party certification. And as you say, or as I mentioned earlier, it is on the passive equipment. So stay tuned. We're going to keep working on this one and find out how the Therma-Fusers can help, or maybe they can't, just depending on how the standard works, but we'll stay on it and see where they fit in. So if you've been tallying points along as we went, you would have gotten to about 21 points here that the Therma-Fuser diffusers can help with. And that's over halfway to a certified building, not a bad start to getting your LEED certification. How was it done? Again, using a low energy system built around the Therma-Fuser diffuser, an all low pressure system helping to achieve that. Getting into the individual temperature control and excellent thermal comfort provided by the diffuser. That better room air mixing that drives in that room air quality. Also that ability to turn down at each diffuser and oversize the diffuser that'll get you to a quiet system. And lastly, those innovative benefits. So Acutherm offers a full range of VAV diffusers. The Therma-Fuser diffuser comes in squares, linear slot diffusers, round diffusers. I mentioned earlier we have electric versions as well. If you want to tie the diffusers back into a building automation system, we can do that. There are options and accessories. We talked about the wall adjusters earlier, like a wall thermostat, allows the occupant easy access to the set point of the diffuser. And when you get into designing your systems around the Therma-Fuser diffusers, that is the topic of another webinar, but we do have products that can help there, pressure control, duct heaters, everything you need to complete a system. Our next webinar, a little plug here, coming up next month, February 15th, is on an overview of Therma-Fuser systems. So if you hadn't had a chance to attend one of our previous webinars, that's a great one to get a good introduction to the Therma-Fuser system and find out what the diffusers are all about. I'll put some contact numbers on the screen here and leave them up as we go through the questions. I'd just like to point out that there's really no better way to find out how a Therma-Fuser diffuser might work for your system than to give it a try. And not saying you have to rush out and install it immediately on your building, although we'd love it if you did. But take a look at the drawings. We can help you with that. Take a look at the system. Any of these folks on the screen now be happy to answer questions and work with you on your systems just to see how a Therma-Fuser diffuser system might help you and might approach your particular building. That said, we'll take a quick look, run through some of the questions. Asked, do we have some examples of LEED submittals from these projects? That's a common question when I run this webinar. I've got the scorecards, but there's a little bit of an art to getting your submittals past the reviewers on a LEED submissions. And the engineers that are doing this and doing it well are keeping those submittals close to themselves. So I'm still working on trying to get some examples, but I do not have any right now. And as I say, it's a little bit of, I don't know, almost intellectual property of the engineers that are good at working with the LEED system and the reviewers. Another question here, what is the best way to retrofit existing VAV box system with Therma-Fusers? Not really related to LEED, but it can be done, and really a topic more for our applications webinar. But there's two things you can focus in on when you're trying to adapt any system to a Therma-Fuser diffuser system. One is static pressure. We talked about it earlier for quiet operation, but the diffusers are low pressure devices, and they are pressure dependent devices. So you do need to design pressure independence into your system. And actually a VAV box lends itself quite well to that. It has a damper already built in, so you can repurpose that for static pressure control within a zone of Therma-Fuser diffusers. And then temperature control. The diffusers work best if you can give them a constant supplier temperature. Not that you can't do supplier temperature reset, just move from one constant to a next, kind of a more step approach to a temperature reset. And if you've got a VAV box with a coil in it, then again, there's your source of temperature control. So retrofitting a VAV box lends itself quite well to working with a zone of Therma-Fuser VAV diffusers. Question, what kind of diffusers have a controller inside to communicate with the building automation system? So I did touch on that briefly. There are electric diffusers in the Therma-Fuser diffuser range, what we refer to as our E-series, which are DDC interoperable diffusers, or our newer Advantage series of diffusers. Both of those have BACnet capability, and it's that BACnet communication protocol that allows you to bring it into a building automation system. Okay, if there are any more questions, feel free to ask them now. Looks like no more questions coming in today. So if there are no further questions, then I would like to thank everyone for attending. And I know your time is valuable, so thank you again for joining us. And this will conclude our webinar on LEED possibilities with Therma-Fuser VAV systems. Thank you.